Take your filthy hands off my billion-dollar engine before you break something 10 generations of your family couldn't afford to replace. Commander Brett Hastings' voice exploded across the USS Theodore Roosevelt's engine room. 60 personnel froze, every eye locked on the black woman in oil-stained coveralls, her palm still resting against Engine Unit 3. Fiona Coleman had been reaching for her technical analysis, handwritten calculations showing the solution these engineers had missed for 3 days. Hastings snatched the papers first, then ripped them in half. The sound cut through the room like a blade. He let the pieces scatter across the deck. The paper fluttered like defeated flags in the oily air, carrying the faint ink scent of her late-night calculations. Did you really think I'd take engineering advice from someone who learned mechanics in a dirt-floor garage? Hastings stepped closer, his Harvard ring catching fluorescent light. Fiona's hands stayed steady. 42 years had taught her not to give men like this the satisfaction of seeing her shake. Commander, the coolant manifold alignment. She's going to teach me about nuclear propulsion. His laugh was designed for the audience. Should we bow down to the contractor who cleans our toilets? I don't clean toilets, sir. I'm a certified mechanical. You worked oil rigs. Congratulations. This is an aircraft carrier, not some rust bucket where you hit things with a wrench and pray. Lieutenant Emily Brooks stared at her tablet. Chief Warrant Officer Davis's jaw clenched, but 28 Navy years had taught him when battles couldn't be won. The vibration pattern indicates harmonic resonance. Fiona kept her voice professional. Computer models won't detect it because they assume perfect installation. Computer models. Hastings invaded her space. You think you understand our systems? You, who probably couldn't pass freshman physics? He gestured at the screens. This equipment costs more than your entire neighborhood. Designed by MIT graduates. And you, someone we hired because you're cheap, think you can solve what they couldn't? The unspoken words. Someone like you. From where you're from, who looks like you. Everyone heard them anyway. I've seen this problem before. 5 years ago, same vibration signature. Security! Remove this woman before she contaminates something else. 2 master-at-arms materialized. Fiona glanced at her battered red toolbox, her father's tools, his only inheritance. She moved toward it. That stays, Hastings blocked her. Security inspects it first. Make sure she didn't sabotage anything. Sabotage? What else is unauthorized system access? He turned to the MAAs. Remove her from the base, permanently, revoke credentials, and find who hired her so this never happens again. The guards took position, firm, not rough, hands hovering near her elbows. As they escorted her out, Fiona looked back. Engine Unit 3 pulsed with that rhythmic vibration, the same frequency from the offshore rig the song computers couldn't hear. Her torn analysis lay scattered like trash. Nobody picked up the pieces. The doors sealed with a hiss. Through the window, Hastings addressed his team. New diagnostics immediately. Get Dr. Whitmore from MIT. Cost doesn't matter. And investigate our contractor vetting. Standards have clearly slipped letting people like that near critical systems. People like that. Brock was already dialing MIT, betting badges beat brains every time. 48 hours. That's all Commander Brett Hastings had. 48 hours before the carrier deployed or stayed docked, a failure rippling through Allied operations and his service record. Brett Hastings, whose dad and granddad wore Admiral stars, couldn't afford to fail. The billion-dollar vessel had a problem. Engine Unit 3 vibrated. Not normal hum, but something wrong. Growing stronger hourly, mocking every diagnostic, every analysis, every simulation. 3 days of the Navy's best minds yielding nothing. Instruments said the engine should work perfectly. The engine kept screaming. Lieutenant Brock looked up. Commander, simulation complete. Recommends thrust bearing replacement. Timeline? 72 hours. Requires dry dock. Hastings' chest tightened. 72 hours meant missing deployment. That meant Admiral questions. Questions meant scrutiny of his leadership. Scrutiny meant people wondering if he'd earned his rank or just inherited the family legacy. Unacceptable. Run alternatives. Yes, sir. Lieutenant Emily Brooks approached cautiously. Fresh from Annapolis, top thermodynamic scores, still believing textbooks explained reality. Should we consider external specialists? We are the specialists, Lieutenant. Hastings gestured at the uniformed credentials surrounding them. Advanced degrees, clearances, certifications. We don't need outside help. We need focus. What he didn't say? Outside help meant admitting failure. Hastings' men didn't fail. Across the room, Chief Davis watched with tired eyes. 28 years. Started enlisted, worked up through skill, not connections. He knew engines, knew people, knew when pride would sink ships. He knew Fiona Coleman. 6 months watching her work, quiet, efficient, brilliant in ways Annapolis didn't teach. Last month she diagnosed a hydraulic problem in 30 seconds their engineers missed for a week. How'd you know? The machine told me. You just listen. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Coolant manifold. 15 degrees misalignment. Harmonic resonance. Won't show on models. FC. Davis stared at the message, then the engine, then Hastings ordering MIT consultants. The vibration pulsed deeper. Somewhere in the massive engine, metal screamed, begging someone to understand. The only person who could had just been thrown out like garbage. Around Hastings, his team scrambled with renewed urgency. Screens glowed with useless data. Sensors mapped problems they couldn't solve. Engineers with top university degrees ran simulations that missed the obvious, because the obvious required listening, not credentials. Lieutenant Brock returned. Dr. Whitmore available, $50,000 per day. Get him here. Spare nothing. Across the base, Fiona sat in her truck in the parking lot, still wearing her coveralls, watching the carrier through her windshield. Security had escorted her out in 15 minutes, didn't even let her collect her personal items from the locker. Her phone showed Davis's number. She'd texted him what they needed to know. He wouldn't act on it. Couldn't. The chain of command didn't work that way. She started her engine, the truck's diesel rumble familiar, honest, speaking truths anyone could hear if they listened. Unlike the men on that carrier who only heard what their pride allowed. Fiona drove towards a gate, past the guard station, away from the billion-dollar problem she could have fixed in 4 hours. Behind her, the carrier's engine sang its distress song to people who would never understand its language. At 0230 hours, Fiona Coleman did something that would either save a billion-dollar carrier or end with federal charges. She used her contractor keycard, not yet deactivated, and slipped back onto the USS Theodore Roosevelt. The engine room was nearly empty. Skeleton crew only. Hastings and his officers asleep after another failed diagnostic session. Emergency lighting cast everything red. Fiona didn't touch the computers. Didn't need to. She walked to Engine Unit 3 and placed her bare palm against the housing. Her father's technique, taught when she was 9. Metal talks, baby girl. You just gotta feel what it's saying. The vibration pulsed through her skin, telling its story. Harmonic. Rhythmic. Not bearing failure. This was resonance. Pressure waves building on themselves. She knew this song. Fiona climbed into the access panel the engineers ignored. 16 inches wide, too tight for pride but perfect for small women. 20 minutes crawling through spaces reeking of coolant and oil. Then she found it. The coolant manifold, installed during retrofit 6 months ago. 15 degrees off specification. Not enough to flag reports. Just enough to create oscillating pressure computer models would never catch. Simple, fixable, invisible to anyone trusting screens over hands. She photographed the misalignment with her phone. Motion sensors triggered. Red lights became white floods. Alarm chirps. Within 90 seconds, 2 master-at-arms appeared, hands on sidearms. "Ma'am, step out of the engine, now!" By 0400, she stood in Hastings' office while he screamed about federal law. "You tampered with a propulsion system. I found your problem, the manifolds. Get out of my Navy." Her badge hit his desk. Security escorted her through pre-dawn darkness, off the carrier, off the base. As she drove away, she watched her rearview mirror. The carrier's lights flickered. The vibration was getting worse. 32 hours until deployment, and the only person with the answer was banned forever. Commander Brett Hastings needed a win. Fast. At 0600 hours, he stood before 3 television cameras and a dozen reporters in the carrier's briefing room, his uniform pressed sharp enough to cut glass. "The USS Theodore Roosevelt represents the pinnacle of American naval engineering," he said smoothly. "We're experiencing a minor technical challenge that we're addressing with the nation's top expertise." A reporter raised her hand. Commander, sources say you've been unable to diagnose the problem for 3 days. Is the deployment in jeopardy? Absolutely not. We've brought in Dr. Samuel Whitmore from MIT, 30 patents in naval propulsion systems. Whatever this issue is, we'll have it resolved within 24 hours. What Hastings didn't mention, Dr. Whitmore cost $50,000 per day, or that the minor technical challenge had gotten worse overnight, the vibration now strong enough to rattle tools off their racks. Behind the cameras, Lieutenant Brock handed Hastings a note. Whitmore arriving 0900. Equipment en route via military transport. Hastings smiled for the cameras. The Navy doesn't cut corners. We leverage the best minds in the world. 12 miles away, in a cramped apartment that smelled like coffee and motor oil, Fiona Coleman couldn't let it go. Her kitchen table was covered in PVC pipes, an old water pump, pressure gauges, and hand-drawn diagrams. She was building a scale model of the carrier's cooling system, 1/10 size, but faithful to the specs she'd memorized. She adjusted one connection 15 degrees off-center and turned on the pump. Water flowed through her makeshift system. The pipes started humming, vibrating, the exact frequency she'd felt on the carrier. Her phone rang. Chief Davis. As the pump hummed wrong in her jury-rigged pipes, Davis's voice crackled. "Jesus, that's it?" "Harmonic resonance from pressure oscillation," Fiona confirmed. "The computer models won't catch it because they assume the retrofit team installed everything perfectly. But I was there, Chief. I watched them work, rushing, behind schedule, cutting corners, nobody checks." "Fiona, I believe you. But Hastings will never listen. His career's on the line. If he admits a contractor was right, he loses everything. I know." She turned off the pump. The vibrations stopped instantly. "What about the Admiral?" "Out of reach. Hastings controls all communication up the chain until this is resolved." "So we just watch them fail?" Davis was quiet for a long moment. "I've got 2 years until retirement. Pension. Grandkids who need that pension. I can't. I'm not asking you to sacrifice anything, Chief. I just needed you to know I'm right." "I know you're right. That's what makes this so damn hard." After he hung up, Fiona stared at her scale model. Then she started filming a video on her phone, explaining the problem, showing the vibration, demonstrating the fix. Maybe someone would listen. Someone had to. Dr. Samuel Whitmore arrived at 0900 with 3 assistants and enough equipment to fill a cargo truck. Silver-haired, 62, supremely confident. His handshake was firm as he greeted Hastings. "Commander, I've reviewed your diagnostic data. Fascinating problem. Can you fix it?" "Of course. It's definitely stress-related, but not the bearings. I believe we're looking at a resonance cascade in the dampening system." Hastings felt relief flood through him, a prestigious expert agreeing with his general direction. "What's your recommendation?" "We install a computer-controlled adaptive dampening array. Sensors detect the vibration frequency and generate counterwaves to cancel it out. Elegant solution. I've used it on offshore platforms. Cost, parts, and installation, $3 million, but it's guaranteed. $3 million. Hastings swallowed hard. "How long?" 18 hours. Operational by 0300 tomorrow. 14 hours before deployment deadline. Cutting it close, but possible. Do it. The installation was impressive. Dozens of sensors, servo-controlled actuators, processing units running adaptive algorithms, the kind of solution that looked brilliant on paper and in presentations. Lieutenant Emily Brooks watched from the catwalk, her Annapolis ring twisting on her finger, the nervous habit she'd never broken. She leaned to the sailor beside her and whispered, "This gizmo costs more than my student loans. Hope it doesn't blow." But something felt wrong. She thought about the contractor, Fiona Coleman, the woman Hastings had humiliated and thrown off the ship. Brooks had done nothing, said nothing, just stood there watching because speaking up meant risking everything she'd worked for. She pulled out her tablet, searching for Fiona's confiscated analysis in the ship's database. Deleted. Completely scrubbed. Brooks bit her lip. Who deletes a technical analysis? Even wrong analyses got filed for reference, unless someone wanted to make sure nobody could prove they'd ignored the right answer. The installation took 16 hours. At 0200, with the deployment deadline 6 hours away, Dr. Whitmore stood before the monitoring station, surrounded by Hastings, Brock, the admiral who'd flown in from the Pentagon, and a dozen senior officers. "Gentlemen, we're ready for initial test." Whitmore's fingers flew across the keyboard. Activating dampening system in 3, 2, 1. The engine room filled with a new sound. A high-pitched whine as the adaptive array came online, sensors reading vibration patterns, actuators responding. For 10 seconds, it worked. The vibration smoothed. Instruments showed decreasing resonance. Then everything went wrong. The whine became a shriek. The vibration didn't decrease. It amplified. Tools rattled. Wall panels shook. A pressure gauge exploded, spraying coolant across the deck. "Shut it down!" The Admiral's voice cut through chaos. Whitmore killed power to the array. The shrieking stopped, but the original vibration remained. Now worse than before. Much worse. The Admiral turned to Hastings, his face granite. "Commander, status report." Hastings looked like he might vomit. "Sir, Dr. Whitmore's solution, I can see what the solution did. I'm asking what you're going to do in the next 6 hours to get my carrier operational. We can recalibrate the array, adjust the frequency response." Whitmore started. "No." The Admiral's voice was flat. "Pack your equipment. You're done." Whitmore's face reddened. "Admiral, with all due respect, adaptive dampening is proven technology. Not on my ship, it isn't. Commander Hastings, you have until 0800 to produce a solution, or I'm aborting deployment and convening a board of inquiry." The Admiral left. His footsteps echoed like a funeral march. Hastings stood in his office at 0300, staring at nothing. Everything was collapsing. The MIT expert had failed. His own diagnostics had failed. In 5 hours, the Admiral would abort deployment, and Brett Hastings's career would end not with stars, but with questions about competence, judgment, leadership. His father had made Admiral at 45. His grandfather had commanded carrier groups. Brett Hastings was about to become the family failure. Lieutenant Brock entered hesitantly. "Sir, should we contact other consultants?" "There's no time." Hastings's voice was hollow. "It's over." Down in the engine room, the vibration pulsed stronger. Metal screaming. Fiona's video had been uploaded to YouTube for 6 hours and had exactly 43 views. She sat in her apartment at 0330, watching the view count not move, knowing that somewhere 12 miles away, a carrier was dying and nobody cared what she knew. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Miss Coleman, this is Seaman Patterson. I watched your video. I was there when Commander Hastings threw you out. I took photos of your analysis before it got deleted. I think I can get this to the Admiral, but I need your permission. They'll know it came from me. I could face court-martial, but this is wrong. Please advise." Fiona stared at the message. A kid, probably 20 years old, entire career ahead of him, willing to risk everything to do the right thing. She started typing, then stopped. If she said yes, she was asking this sailor to sacrifice his future for hers. If she said no, the carrier failed, and thousands of lives potentially at risk when Allied forces waited for support that never came. Her father's voice in her memory. "Baby girl, doing right ain't always doing safe." She typed, "Patterson, you don't owe me anything. This is your call, but that engine's going to fail, and people need to know there was another way." She hit send. For 3 minutes, nothing. Then her phone exploded with notifications. Patterson hadn't just sent her analysis to the Admiral. He'd sent it to the base newspaper, the Navy Times, the Virginia Pilot, posted it on Reddit's Navy subreddit, on military Facebook groups, sent it to the reporters who'd covered Hastings' press conference. The response was immediate, 20 minutes. Navy veterans commenting, confirming her math, sharing stories of similar problems. 30 minutes. #listen to Fiona trending on military Twitter. 45 minutes. Reporters swarming. A journalist from the Virginia Pilot called her phone. 60 minutes. The story went live. Navy ignored civilian contractors' fix while burning millions on MIT consultant. 90 minutes. Senators noticed. Pentagon officials noticed. Veterans groups noticed. At 0500, 3 hours before deployment deadline, the Admiral's phone started ringing. Not just reporters, senators, Pentagon officials, veterans groups, all asking the same question. Why was the Navy dismissing a black woman's solution without even looking at it? The pressure just shifted from the engine to Commander Brett Hastings, and everyone was watching. At 0515 hours, the Admiral's aide knocked on Commander Hastings's door. "Sir, the Admiral needs you in his office immediately." Hastings had been awake all night, staring at diagnostic screens that told him nothing. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 hours. The walk to the Admiral's office felt like a death march. Inside, the Admiral stood behind his desk, tablet in hand, his expression carved from ice. Hey, Commander, are you aware that a viral news story is currently circulating about this vessel? Sir? The Admiral turned the tablet around. The headline blazed, Navy ignored black woman's solution while wasting millions on Ivy League consultant. Hastings felt his stomach drop into his boots. The article had everything. Fiona's handwritten analysis, photos of the manifold, her scale model video showing the exact vibration, testimony from Navy veterans confirming her math, screenshots of Hastings' press conference promising MIT expertise would solve everything, and quotes. So many quotes from active duty personnel posting anonymously about the contractor who got thrown out for being right. Sir, I can explain. Can you? The Admiral's voice could have frozen steel. Because I'm looking at a technical analysis that was submitted to you 3 days ago. An analysis that appears to correctly identify the problem we just spent $3 million failing to fix. An analysis you not only ignored but had deleted from our database. She wasn't qualified. She has 17 years of offshore engineering experience and solved an identical problem on a Gulf platform in 2020. I just got off the phone with that platform's chief engineer. He confirms her fix worked perfectly. The Admiral leaned forward. You know what he also told me? That their supervisors ignored her too, until the cooling system cracked and flooded 2 decks. Hastings said nothing. There was nothing to say. I've got senators calling, Pentagon brass calling, veterans groups calling, all asking why we're dismissing expert analysis because it came from a civilian contractor who happens to be a black woman. The Admiral's jaw tightened. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Miss Coleman. You're going to ask her politely to return to this vessel, and you're going to give her whatever she needs to fix this engine. Sir, with all respect, we can't make command decisions based on social media pressure. This isn't about social media, Commander. This is about the fact that you had the right answer 3 days ago and buried it because of pride. The Admiral's voice dropped to something more dangerous than shouting. You have 3 hours until I abort this deployment. If Miss Coleman can't or won't help, that's on her. But if she can help and you interfere in any way, you'll be counting rivets on a desk in Alaska for the rest of your very short career. Am I clear? Yes, sir. Then get her on the phone, now. Fiona's phone rang at 0530. She was still in her apartment, watching her analysis spread across the internet like wildfire, unable to believe what was happening. Unknown number. She answered. Miss Coleman, this is Captain Morrison, Naval Propulsion Specialist. A woman's voice, crisp and professional. I've been ordered to conduct an independent review of your technical analysis. I've spent 20 minutes examining it. Fiona's heart hammered. And it's sound, better than sound, it's exactly right. Why wasn't this examined when you submitted it? You'd have to ask Commander Hastings. I already did, he had no good answer. A pause. Miss Coleman, I need you back on this carrier. We have deployment in 2.5 hours. Can you fix this? In 2.5 hours? No. In 6 hours with the right team? Yes. We don't have 6 hours. Then abort deployment. Silence on the other end. Then, the Admiral wants to offer you a deal. Come back now as senior technical consultant. Navy contractor rate. You get 4 hours to prove your theory. If you can't, we abort and no one blames you. If you can, you save this deployment and we make damn sure everyone knows it. 4 hours. Fiona looked at her scale model, her diagrams, her father's tools sitting by the door. I need my toolbox back. The red one. Already retrieved from evidence. And I choose my own team. Chief Davis and whoever he recommends. Done. And Commander Hastings stays out of my way. A brief pause. Then something that might have been a smile in Morrison's voice. That's already been arranged. A car's outside your building right now. Fiona looked out her window. A Navy sedan, lights flashing. She grabbed her coveralls. 4 hours to prove everyone wrong, or watch a billion-dollar mission collapse because pride mattered more than truth. Fiona walked back onto the USS Theodore Roosevelt at 0545 with her father's red toolbox and 3.5 hours to do the impossible. The engine room looked different. Sailors who'd ignored her for 6 months watched with something like hope, others with shame. Commander Hastings stood near Engine Unit 3, face barely controlling rage. Captain Morrison met Fiona at the entrance. Miss Coleman, you have full engineering authority, whatever you need. I need Chief Davis and 3 mechanics he trusts. Everyone else stays clear. Davis was there, weathered face splitting with his first real smile in days. Picked your team, Anderson, Williams, and Brooks. Fiona glanced at Lieutenant Emily Brooks standing at attention, her Annapolis ring absent for the first time anyone could remember. Ma'am, I'd like to help, Brooks said quietly, if you'll have me. Fiona studied her 3 seconds, then nodded. You good with tight spaces? I can be. Then let's work. Hastings stepped forward. Captain Morrison, I must protest. We're trusting mission-critical repairs to the person who correctly diagnosed this 3 days ago while you deleted her analysis. Morrison's voice cut like a blade. Commander, you're welcome to observe quietly, or return to quarters. Choose now. Hastings stepped back, jaw working. Fiona approached Engine Unit 3, palm against the housing. The throb was worse, angrier, metal screaming louder. We're going in! The coolant manifold was buried behind 12 tons of equipment. Standard procedure required dry dock removal, weeks of work, cranes, specialized tools. Fiona pointed at a maintenance shaft barely visible behind a panel. That tunnel runs parallel to the manifold, 16 inches wide, unused since the 90s. Regulations say it's too dangerous. Davis looked at the shaft, then at Fiona. You can't be serious. I've crawled through worse on burning oil rigs. Those weren't nuclear-powered. Then I better not screw up. She stripped to her tank top. Heat level? Davis checked a gauge. 130 degrees. Perfect. Fiona grabbed heat gel from her toolbox, coating her arms and shoulders. Chief, you're my eyes on instruments. Brooks feeds me tools. Anderson and Williams monitor coolant pressure. Any spike, you yell. She grabbed her custom socket wrench, modified in her apartment specifically for this job, and her headlamp. Radio check. Davis handed her a comm unit. We've got you. Fiona looked at the 16-inch opening. Hell leading to a manifold installed wrong because someone rushed and nobody checked. She crawled inside. Heat hit immediately, oppressive, suffocating. Metal pressed her shoulders, hips. No room to turn, only forward. 20 feet to first junction, Davis crackled in her ear. You good? Peachy. Sweat already soaking through. She crawled inches at a time. The headlamp showed rust, condensation, places where metal had worn thin. One wrong move would puncture a coolant line, flood the shaft with boiling liquid hot enough to strip skin from bone. Her father's voice in memory. When it gets hard, baby girl, that's when you find what you're made of. 30 minutes in, her hands bled. The wrench slipped in sweat-slicked palms, gritting her teeth like Dad on a busted transmission back in Georgia. 45 minutes, her shoulders screamed from the confined space. 60 minutes, she reached the manifold junction. Massive equipment sitting 15 degrees off-spec because someone rushed the retrofit and nobody double-checked. Found it, she radioed, starting realignment. The work was blind. She couldn't see bolts, only feel them. 3/4-inch hex heads torqued to specifications she'd memorized. Her custom wrench fit perfectly, the only tool that could work in this impossible space. Loosening bolt 1, metal groaned. Coolant pressure spiked. Pressure climbing, Williams yelled. I know, it'll stabilize. Fiona's arms shook. Bolt 2, another groan. The manifold shifted slightly. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Heat unbearable. Her lungs felt like they were breathing soup. Bolt 3, rotating manifold now. This was it. Everything either worked or catastrophically failed. She felt the manifold move under her bleeding hands, click into proper alignment. Felt the growl change through metal pressed against her chest. Tightening sequence, bolt 1. Her hands shook so hard she could barely grip the wrench. Bolt 2, her father's wrench. The one that fixed 1,000 engines, the one that fed them when nobody else would hire a black mechanic in rural Georgia. Bolt 3, manifold seated. She could barely speak through exhaustion. Test it. Silence. Then Davis. Initiating startup sequence. Fiona pressed her cheek against metal, feeling the engine's heartbeat. The throb changed, smoothed, the angry scream becoming a steady purr. Instruments reading green across the board. Brooks's voice cracked with emotion. The engine room erupted in cheers. Fiona started the agonizing backward crawl, 90 minutes of hell reversed. When she finally emerged from the shaft, grease-streaked and grinning, Davis pulled her to her feet. The room's roar drowned Hastings' glare. Even Captain Morrison smiled. But Commander Hastings stood apart, face dark, phone already out, typing furiously. Before anyone could celebrate, he was making his final move. The Admiral arrived at 0630 for final inspection, 30 minutes before deployment deadline. Hastings was waiting, formal report in hand. Behind him, Engine Unit 3 hummed perfectly. Every instrument green, Fiona's repair holding under full load. But Hastings wasn't done. Admiral, while the engine is currently operational, I must recommend 72-hour monitoring before deployment. He held up the report. The repair procedure was unconventional, not approved through proper protocols. We can't risk mission failure based on untested methodology. Captain Morrison stepped forward. Commander, the engine's been running flawlessly for 45 minutes. 45 minutes isn't sufficient data for systems this critical. Hastings turned to the Admiral. Sir, I'm thinking of the mission. American lives. We can't deploy on contractor guesswork, no matter how politically convenient. The room went silent. Fiona stood near her toolbox, covered in grease and blood, exhaustion written everywhere. She'd crawled through hell, fixed what his experts couldn't, and he was still trying to bury her. The Admiral's expression was unreadable. Miss Coleman, you have something to say? Every eye turned. Fiona was so tired she could barely stand, hands shaking, blood seeping through bandages, but her voice came steady. Sir, that engine will run flawlessly. The manifold alignment was 15 degrees off from retrofit. Computer models couldn't catch it because they assumed competent installation. I fixed what your experts missed because I listened to the machine instead of the manual. Hastings couldn't stop himself. With all due respect, Admiral, mission-critical decisions can't rest on... On what, Commander? The Admiral's voice cut like steel. Say it! Silence. The Admiral stepped closer to Hastings. Say what you've been thinking this entire time. What you said when you ripped her analysis, when you threw her off this ship, when you deleted her work. His voice dropped dangerously. Say it in front of everyone so we all know exactly what this is about. Hastings' face drained. Sir, I never what? Never dismissed the only person who correctly diagnosed this because she didn't have the right pedigree, the right schools? The Admiral paused. I've reviewed everything. Miss Coleman's analysis was sound, submitted properly, buried by ego. He turned to Morrison. Your professional assessment? Textbook perfect, sir. Better than our retrofit team's original installation. Chief Davis? Davis straightened. Sir, 28 years working propulsion. That's the best diagnostic and repair I've ever witnessed. The Admiral looked at Hastings. Commander, you're relieved pending investigation. Report to JAG at 0900. Hastings went from white to red. Sir, you can't... I can, and I am. You endangered this vessel, this mission, and 5,000 sailors because you couldn't admit a civilian knew more than you. The Admiral's voice carried to every corner. Security, escort Commander Hastings to quarters. 2 master-at-arms stepped forward, the same ones who'd thrown Fiona off 2 days ago. The Admiral turned to Fiona. Miss Coleman, we deploy at 0700. You're boarding as senior propulsion consultant, full Navy rate with hazard pay. The room erupted. As the MAAs led Hastings away, he passed Fiona. Their eyes met 1 second, his whispered words barely audible. This isn't over. Then gone. But Morrison approached with a tablet, face grim. Miss Coleman, there's something else. A maintenance log, dated 3 hours ago. Hastings had uploaded false documentation claiming Fiona's shaft access damaged coolant seals, sabotage that could trigger safety abort. The log was already submitted to Pentagon oversight for review. The USS Theodore Roosevelt deployed at 0700 hours. Fiona stood on deck as Norfolk faded behind them, salt spray catching morning light. She wore a temporary Navy contractor badge with full engineering clearance, the same badge Hastings had ripped off 3 days ago. Below deck, Engine Unit 3 purred. Her repair held under full operational load. Instruments showed perfect alignment. The angry throb was gone, replaced by steady hum of a billion-dollar machine finally doing what it was designed to do. The sabotage investigation moved fast. By 0900, JAG had reviewed Hastings' uploaded maintenance logs. The false documentation claiming Fiona's shaft access damaged coolant seals fell apart under scrutiny. Timestamps didn't match. Technical details were wrong. Security footage showed Hastings uploading files at 0625, 5 minutes before the Admiral's arrival. Not concerned officer actions, desperate man actions. By 1100, Hastings' security clearance was suspended. Criminal charges were being considered. Falsifying maintenance records on a nuclear vessel was federal. By 1300, the Navy Times had the full story. Not just the engine repair, but the attempted cover-up. The deleted analysis, the banned contractor. $3 million wasted on MIT consultants while the right answer sat ignored. The headline wrote itself, Navy commander faces charges after dismissing black woman's solution, then attempting to sabotage her repair. It went viral within an hour, not as diversity story, as competence story, a story about systems that valued credentials over capability. Comment sections exploded with similar stories, engineers dismissed by managers, technicians ignored by supervisors, people who knew the answer but lacked pedigree to be heard. Fiona gave one interview to the Navy Times, standing in the engine room next to the unit she'd fixed. I didn't repair that engine as a black woman or a civilian, she said quietly. I repaired it as a mechanic who listened. The reporter pressed, What would you say to other people dismissed because of their background? Fiona shrugged. I fixed it because I could hear it screaming, credentials don't have ears. The quote became the headline, shared 10,000 times in 6 hours. Below deck, the culture shifted. Junior mechanics approached Fiona during off hours, asking questions about diagnostic techniques, about feeling vibrations, about trusting hands as much as instruments. She started informal training sessions in the engine room after her shift. Computers tell you what they're programmed to find, she explained to 20 sailors sitting on the deck around her. But machines tell you what's actually wrong. You just have to learn their language. Chief Davis watched from the catwalk, weathered smile finally reaching his eyes. 28 years he'd watched credentials trump competence. Not anymore. That evening, Brooks and Patterson lined up outside her quarters, apologies tumbling out like loose bolts. Brooks went first. Miss Coleman, I should have spoken up when Hastings— You did speak up, Fiona interrupted gently. When it mattered. When I needed a team, you volunteered. That took courage. But I should have, could have. Fiona waved it away. Question isn't what you should have done 3 days ago. It's what you'll do next time someone gets dismissed because they don't have the right background. Brooks met her eyes. I'll speak up, earlier. Then we're good. Patterson shifted nervously. Ma'am, I broke chain of command. You saved this deployment, kid. Probably saved lives. Fiona's voice was firm. Don't apologize for doing the right thing. The captain's mass— The Admiral personally reviewed your case. Reprimand on paper, commendation off the record. Fiona smiled slightly. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Just don't make a habit of it. Patterson grinned. Yes, ma'am. 3 weeks into deployment, Fiona video called her father. He was in the care facility in Georgia. Thinner than she remembered, hands shaking from Parkinson's that had forced him to retire. But his eyes were bright, wet with tears. Baby girl, I watched the news, read the articles, saw them talking about my little girl on CNN. It wasn't that big a deal, Daddy. Don't you lie to me. His voice cracked. You outwrenched the whole damn Navy with my tools, with what I taught you. You taught me to listen, and you listened better than anyone. He wiped his eyes. Your mama would have been so proud. I'm so proud. Fiona's throat tightened. I love you, Daddy. Love you too, baby girl. You keep listening to those machines. They'll never lie to you like people do. After the call ended, Fiona sat alone in her quarters, looking at her father's red toolbox in the corner. The same box thrown aside as evidence. The same box that had fixed what billion-dollar systems couldn't. During a port call, Fiona visited the Theodore Roosevelt. The engine room crew greeted her like family. Miss Coleman! Chief Davis beamed. Come see this! He led her to Engine Unit 3. A small brass plaque had been installed near the access panel she'd crawled through. Listen to the machine, FC. Captain Morrison ordered it, Davis said. Said every engineer who works this vessel needs to remember what actually matters. Fiona touched the plaque, then the engine housing. The hum was perfect. 50,000 operational hours since her repair. Not a single issue. Petty Officer Patterson approached with a tablet. Ma'am, your repair's being written into the training manual. Case study on diagnostic methodology. She read the summary. her techniques, her approach becoming official Navy doctrine. "They misspelled manifold," she said dryly. Patterson grinned. "I'll submit a correction." A week later, a knock at her quarters. Captain Morrison stood outside, tablet in hand, expression unreadable. "Miss Coleman, the Admiral would like to see you. He has a proposal." Fiona looked up from her technical manual. "What kind of proposal?" Morrison's lips twitched into something almost like a smile. "The kind that doesn't involve fixing engines anymore." She handed Fiona the tablet. On the screen, a position description. Senior Technical Instructor, Applied Diagnostic Fundamentals Program, Naval Station, Great Lakes. Salary, GS-13. Authority, curriculum development across all propulsion training. "He wants you to teach the next generation how to listen," Morrison said quietly. "Not just on this carrier, across the entire fleet." Fiona stared at the screen, her father's voice echoing in her memory. Something that would change everything. 6 months later, Fiona Coleman stood in a Navy classroom at Naval Station Great Lakes, wearing contractor blues with Senior Technical Instructor embroidered on her badge. She was teaching the next generation of mechanics something the Academy never taught: how to trust their hands as much as their computers. 30 sailors sat at workbenches, ranging from fresh recruits to veteran petty officers sent for retraining. The program she'd designed, Applied Diagnostic Fundamentals, was now mandatory for all propulsion specialists across the fleet. This was the Admiral's proposal. Not just a permanent position, but authority to reshape how the Navy trained its engineers. "Instruments tell you what their program defined," Fiona explained, walking between workbenches. "But the machine tells you what's actually wrong. Today you're going to learn the difference." She placed her hand on a training engine, feeling the subtle vibration most of them couldn't detect yet. "Close your eyes. Feel it." 30 hands touched metal, learning to listen. Her student roster was deliberately diverse, exactly what the Navy needed. Young men and women from backgrounds that didn't include Harvard or MIT, but included dirt floor garages and family repair shops. People who understood machines because they'd had to. After class, a young black woman approached hesitantly, 19 years old, from rural Mississippi, hands already marked with honest work. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say I almost didn't join the Navy. Thought I wasn't smart enough because I never went to college. Then I saw your story." Fiona studied her. "Saw herself 20 years ago. What's your name?" "Seaman Jackson, ma'am." "What did you do before the Navy, Jackson?" "Worked in my uncle's diesel shop since I was 12. "Then you're already smarter than half the officers on this base. Don't ever let anyone tell you different." Jackson's eyes went bright. "Yes, ma'am." Commander Brett Hastings' outcome came through official channels and news articles Fiona read without emotion. Dishonorably discharged. Federal charges dropped to misdemeanor in a plea deal. Security clearance permanently revoked. Working at his family's defense consulting firm in a carefully titled position that avoided the word engineer. No stars, no Pentagon career, just consequences. Delivered quietly by systems that corrected themselves when forced to. During a port call, Fiona visited the Theodore Roosevelt. The engine room crew greeted her like family. "Miss Coleman," Chief Davis, months from retirement, beamed. "Come see this." He led her to Engine Unit 3. A small brass plaque had been installed near the access panel she'd crawled through. "Listen to the machine. FC." "Captain Morrison ordered it," Davis said. "Said every engineer who works this vessel needs to remember what actually matters." Fiona touched the plaque, then the engine housing. She traced the letters, feeling the cool brass hum under her fingers. Silent thanks from the machine. The vibration was perfect. 50,000 operational hours since her repair. Not a single issue. Petty Officer Patterson approached with a tablet. "Ma'am, thought you'd want to see this. Your repair's being written into the training manual. Case study on diagnostic methodology." She read the summary. Her techniques, her approach, becoming official Navy doctrine. "They misspelled manifold," she said dryly. Patterson grinned. "I'll submit a correction." Final scene, Fiona's apartment, late evening. Her teenage niece sat at the kitchen table, grease up to her elbows, working on a small engine Fiona had salvaged from a junkyard, teaching her what her father had taught her, what his father had taught him. The girl looked up, frustrated. "Aunt Fee, the manual says this valve should be working, but it's not." "What does the manual know?" "Everything? The manual knows what should work if everything's perfect." Fiona sat beside her. Close your eyes. Put your hand here. Feel what it's telling you. The girl placed her palm on the engine, uncertain. What do you feel? It's vibrating weird, not smooth. Where's it coming from? The girl's eyes opened. Not the valve, the line feeding it. Now you're listening. They worked together in comfortable silence. 3 generations of mechanics in one moment, her father's hands in hers in her niece's. The girl asked quietly, "Did you ever think they'd actually listen to you?" Fiona smiled, hands deep in the engine. "No, but I knew the engine would tell the truth eventually. Machines don't care about titles." She reached for her father's red toolbox, the same battered case from that first day on the carrier, now with a Navy decal beside her father's shop logo. Inside, his tools waited, ready for the next person who'd learned to listen. Competence speaks louder than credentials. Truth doesn't need permission to be true. What expertise are you carrying that the world hasn't recognized yet?